Basher Bingum received the call about his father somewhere between a flooded cornfield and the edge of Madison, and for one brief, shameful moment, his first feeling was disappointment that the old man had not died yet. Rain hammered the windshield hard enough to blur the highway into streaks of silver and black. The voice on the phone, a neighbor he barely remembered, kept talking about Arthur Bingham's lungs, about weakness, about how it may be time. But Basher barely listened. His thick hand tightened around the steering wheel, while memories rose like smoke from a fire he had spent 6 years trying to outrun. Blood on the kitchen floorboards, his mother crying behind a locked bathroom door, Arthur standing in the barn with a belt wrapped twice around his fist. And still, beneath all of it, beneath the hatred and the distance and the years spent building another life in the city, there remained a terrible truth Basher could not bury. He did not want his father to die alone. Basher Bingum left Madison under a rinsed grey sky, the city still sweating out the last of the afternoon rain. The streets shone like strips of coal oil beneath the tires of his truck, and the courthouse dome behind him looked pale and sickly in the distance, disappearing by degrees in the rearview mirror. 52 miles was all that separated the city from Marquette County, but memory could stretch land wider than oceans. The truck rolled to a stop beneath the leaning cottonwoods beside the farmhouse, engine ticking softly in the cooling air. For a long moment, Basher stayed behind the wheel, with both hands resting on it, staring through the windshield as twilight settled over the property like dust upon old furniture. The farm was smaller than memory had kept it. Not smaller in acreage, but in spirit. The onion fields stretched in long, dark bands toward the horizon. Their rows, still disciplined beneath the fading light, though weeds now threaded through them in green scars. Parts of the fencing had collapsed inward. The barn roof sagged slightly at the center, like the spine of a tired horse. Rust bloomed over the machinery, abandoned beside the shed. One shutter hung crooked against the farmhouse, tapping faintly in the evening breeze. And yet the place endured. That was the strange beauty of it. Neglect had not erased the farm. It had merely aged it into honesty. The buildings wore their years openly now. Rain had silvered the wood. Moss climbed patiently over stone foundations. The fields smelled of wet earth and onion root and old labour buried deep beneath generations of seasons. Everything looked worn thin by weather and time, but still standing stubbornly against both. Basher stepped from the truck and listened. No city noise, no distant sirens, only the wind moving softly through the crops, like hands brushing over coarse fabric. The land seemed to recognize him before the house did. He grabbed his bag from the passenger seat and walked up the porch steps, which groaned beneath his weight, exactly as they had when he was a boy sneaking in after dark. The screen door still dragged against the frame. Even that sound reached into him like an old song. The kitchen smelled faintly of onions, black coffee, and lemon polish. His mother turned from the sink at the sound of the door opening. For a second, she simply stared. Age had narrowed her some. Her shoulders were smaller now, her cheeks gentler around the bone, and silver threaded heavily through her hair. But she still stood upright, with the same quiet sturdiness he remembered, planted firm as a fence post despite the years. There remained something durable in her face, something weather could not fully claim. Basher. The word cracked apart halfway through. Before he could answer, she crossed the kitchen quickly and wrapped both arms around him. He set his bag down and folded himself around her carefully, feeling how slight she had become beneath his hands. She smelled the same, soap, flower, lavender, home. Guilt stirred low in his stomach. He had left her here with Arthur, left her to grow old beside that hard and violent man, while he escaped into courtrooms and city apartments, and the soft kindness of June's hands. But even as the guilt rose, another truth followed close behind it. She would never have left Arthur, not for Basher, not for herself. Perhaps it was loyalty, perhaps duty, perhaps fear so old it had become indistinguishable from love. Or maybe Basher sometimes thought bitterly she was simply foolish. Why didn't you call? She asked, pulling back to look at him. I wasn't expecting. How did you even hear? Basher shrugged off his coat slowly. Word travels. From who? He glanced toward the hallway leading deeper into the house. Maybe he summoned me, Basher said. Your husband always did have a talent for reaching out and ruining things from a distance. His mother's expression tightened immediately. Don't say things like that. I'm kidding. No, you aren't. Basher gave the faintest smile, though it carried no warmth. No, he admitted. Probably not. The kitchen fell quiet, except for the hum of the refrigerator. Finally, she spoke softer. He's mostly upstairs now. Barely leaves the bedroom. Basher nodded once. I'll see him later. Her eyes searched his face. Basher, I just drove an hour through rain and cow country. Right now, I want hot water and 10 minutes where nobody talks to me. She hesitated, then nodded gently. There are fresh towels in the bathroom. He picked up his bag and moved toward the hallway. Halfway there, he paused. June would have known exactly what to say in this house. The thought arrived so suddenly it hollowed him. His wife possessed a softness that had never been weakness, though men like Arthur would always mistake it for such. June understood how to enter painful rooms without surrendering herself to them. She could sit beside grief without trying to conquer it. Basher had spent most of his life believing survival required hardness, because hardness was the only language his father respected. But June had moved through the world differently. She bent where others broke, and somehow she had made him gentler too, not weaker, just easier to live beside. He missed her then with an almost physical force, not dramatically, not loudly. Grief no longer arrived like a storm after all these years. It came quietly now, like winter light entering an empty room. He imagined her hand briefly against the center of his back, as she used to do when she sensed anger building inside him, grounding him, reminding him there were still softer ways to survive the world. The bath water turned grey around Basher before he finally climbed out. He had stayed there long after the heat began fading, stretched deep in the old porcelain tub, while steam gathered thickly along the ceiling. The house creaked around him in familiar rhythms, the settling groan of old beams, the soft complaint of pipes, the distant ticking of the kitchen clock downstairs. Sounds he had once hated for their intimacy now carried something almost mournful. He scrubbed the road from his skin, though exhaustion clung stubbornly beneath it. The bathroom mirror fogged completely, except for a narrow crescent where his reflection stared back at him. Broad face, dark eyes worn tired around the edges, streaks of silver beginning to touch his beard. A farmer's body, gone slightly heavy through middle age, though strength still lived plainly in him. He looked like Arthur around the shoulders now. That realization soured his mood instantly. By the time he dressed and came downstairs, evening had settled fully outside the windows. The farmhouse glowed with that peculiar rural warmth born from low lights and old wood, golden against the surrounding dark. Then he heard his mother's call from the kitchen. "Basher, supper's ready." The word supper struck him harder than expected. Nobody in Madison said supper anymore. Dinner. Always dinner. Spoken quickly between schedules and appointments. But supper belonged to farms. The weather reports on AM radio. Two muddy boots left beside doors. He stepped into the dining room and stopped. A young man sat at the table beside his mother. Basher's first impression was of color. The stranger's skin held a ruddy warmth to it, touched deep by sun and wind, glowing copper red beneath the hanging kitchen light, even as dusk emptied itself beyond the windows. His hair was neat and brushed carefully back, resting just above his shoulders in soft, dark waves, threaded faintly with auburn. He looked young, mid-20s perhaps, but carried himself with an unusual stillness. Hands folded calmly before him, as though he belonged there. Basher's gaze shifted instinctively toward the staircase. "Is he coming down?" he asked. The question left his mouth sharper than intended. Not because he cared whether Arthur joined them, but because the entire scene felt wrong in a way that tightened his nerves. Arthur Bingham barely tolerated neighbors crossing the property line. A strange young man sitting comfortably at his supper table bordered on the absurd. His mother glanced briefly toward the stairs herself. "No," she said quietly. "Your father already ate." Basher looked back at the stranger. The young man met his eyes evenly, without challenge, but without nervousness either. There was something unsettling in that calm, Most people reacted to Basher's size immediately, either shrinking from it or bracing against it. This one did neither. His mother wiped her hands nervously on her apron. "Basher," she said, "this is Walter." The young man stood then and extended a hand across the table. "Pleasure to finally meet you." Finally. The word lodged strangely in Basher's mind. He took Walter's hand automatically. The grip was firm, dry, and cool despite the warmth of the kitchen. "Have we met before?" Basher asked. Walter smiled faintly. "No, sir. But something about him felt familiar anyway. Not his face, not his voice. Something older than that. Like remembering a dream the body recognized before the mind could." Basher lowered himself slowly into the chair across from Walter, the old wood creaking beneath his weight. The table had not changed in 20 years. Same cigarette burns near the center. Same scratches from hurried knives and cast iron pans dragged carelessly across its surface. Even the overhead light still carried that amber dimness that made every supper feel caught slightly outside of time. His mother moved quietly through the kitchen behind them, setting plates down, stirring something on the stove, wiping already clean counters simply to keep her hands occupied. Walter sat with an ease that unsettled Basher further. Not arrogance, not boldness, belonging. That was what bothered him. The young man rested one forearm against the table, while evening shadows deepened softly across his features. His clothes were plain work clothes, worn honestly at the seams, and there remained traces of dirt beneath his fingernails, despite the obvious effort to wash. Outside the windows, the last bruised colors of sunset bled slowly over the dark fields. Basher folded his arms. "So, how exactly do you know my family? Walter glanced briefly toward the window before answering, as though considering the shape of the land itself. Fields don't stay silent forever, he said. Neglect begins speaking after a while. Some people hear it. Basher stared at him. That doesn't answer my question. From the kitchen, his mother stepped in quickly, drying her hands with a dish towel. It was after your father first took sick, she explained. I woke early one morning and saw somebody out in the south field. She smiled faintly at the memory. Scared me half to death at first. I thought someone was stealing equipment. Walter lowered his eyes modestly while she spoke. But when I went out there, he was working, just tending things, clearing weeds, checking irrigation lines. She shook her head softly, calm as anything. Said the fields looked lonely. Basher's brow tightened. His mother continued. I brought him lunch later that afternoon to thank him. Then he came back the next day, and the day after that. And eventually, Basher said flatly, he moved in. Walter finally looked at him directly. I stay in the loft above the equipment shed. That answer irritated Basher even more, for reasons he could not properly name. The whole arrangement felt porous, unstructured, wrong. His mother set bowls onto the table carefully. He's been a blessing, Basher. The word blessing nearly made him laugh. Instead, he asked, where are you from, Walter? Walter opened his mouth slightly, though no answer immediately came. His mother stepped in again before the silence could fully form. He's from some organization, I think. She looked uncertain now herself. From the city somewhere. A group helping struggling farmers. Walter neither confirmed nor denied it. Basher's eyes narrowed. What group? Walter took a slow drink of water. There are many kinds of work, needing done these days. That's not an answer either. The kitchen air tightened subtly. Outside, wind moved through the onion fields in long, whispered waves. Basher felt something dark and unpleasant shifting inside him then. Something deeper than suspicion alone. At first, he tried to call it protectiveness, but that was not quite true. The farm had been rotting for years, and he had abandoned it willingly. Arthur's sickness had not brought Basher home out of love for the land. Yet, seeing another man seated at this table, another pair of hands touching the fields where his own blood had been spilled and hardened since childhood, awakened something territorial and raw inside him. The resentment embarrassed him even as it grew, because the farm was tangled hopelessly with pain. Every fence line carried memory. Every room in the house held echoes of Arthur's temper. Basher had spent 6 years building a life far from this place, convincing himself he wanted none of it anymore. But inheritance lived stubbornly in the body. Watching Walter sit there with his sun-burnished skin and calm eyes and dirt beneath his nails, Basher felt suddenly replaced in some ancient and wordless way, as though the land itself had found another son while he was gone. And beneath that resentment lurked something worse. Shame, because Walter had stayed where Basher had fled. The thought scraped at him quietly. Not because Basher believed the farm deserved saving. Not because Arthur deserved loyalty. But because some bruised and boyish part of him still believed the fields belonged to him by suffering alone. He had bled here, endured here, buried pieces of himself in the soil, long before Walter ever appeared from whatever strange road had delivered him. And now the crops were greener than Basher remembered. The fences stood repaired. His mother smiled more softly when she spoke. It frightened him how quickly bitterness could begin sounding like jealousy inside a man's own mind. Supper ended mostly in silence. Forks scraped softly against plates, while the old clock ticked from the living room with the solemn patience of something that expected to outlive them all. Walter ate slowly and neatly, thanking Basher's mother each time she passed near him with more bread or potatoes. Basher noticed that irritation growing sharper every small courtesy, because the young man acted neither ashamed nor defensive. He behaved like someone entirely at peace beneath another man's roof. When the meal finally ended, Walter rose first and carried his plate to the sink, despite Basher's mother insisting he leave it. The kitchen light burnished the reddish warmth of his skin, while dark evening pressed thickly against the windows beyond him. Then he looked toward Basher. "I'll be in the north field at sunrise," Walter said. "You're welcome to join me." Basher leaned back in his chair slowly. A humorless smile touched his mouth. "You can't invite me to my own fields." The words landed harder than he intended. His mother sighed immediately. "Basher, what? It would do you good to be outside again," she said firmly. "And it would do you good to calm down." Walter said nothing to defend himself. He simply nodded once toward her. "Thank you for supper." Then he stepped back from the kitchen and disappeared out the back door into the dark without another glance toward Basher. The silence left behind lingered strangely. Basher rubbed one hand across his jaw. "I don't like this." His mother continued rinsing dishes. "I gathered that." "No, I mean it." He lowered his voice. "You let some stranger just walk onto the property and move into the shed. He helped. That's not the point." "He helped," she repeated Basher exhaled through his nose. There was no use arguing once her voice took that tone. His mother could endure storms simply by refusing to move within them. Still, something scratched persistently at the back of his thoughts. I swear I know him from somewhere, Basher muttered. Or I've seen him before. His mother shook her head faintly. I doubt that. But Basher was not so sure. That night, he never went down the hall upstairs. Several times he thought about Arthur lying awake beyond the darkness at the end of the hall, breathing through ruined lungs, in the room where Basher had spent half his childhood, fearing footsteps outside the door. But each time he approached the staircase, something inside him hardened and turned away again. So he slept instead, or tried to. Morning arrived, pale and golden, through the bedroom window. Basher woke before fully understanding where he was. For one brief moment, he was young again, hearing the distant rumble of tractors and waiting for Arthur's voice to thunder through the house before dawn chores. Then memory returned. The sunlight spilling across the room carried the same aching beauty it always had out here. Rural mornings possessed a softness cities could never imitate. Light arrived slowly over the farmland, brushing itself across fields and fences with reverence rather than urgency. Dust floated gold through the quiet room. Beyond the window, the earth still held traces of silver frost. Basher dressed and splashed cold water over his face before heading downstairs. His mother stood at the stove already dressed for the day, hair pinned loosely back, while coffee brewed thick and dark beside her. You speak to your father yet? She asked without turning. I said I would later. She gave a small nod, though disappointment lingered in it. Basher poured coffee into a chipped mug. What did the doctor say? A shadow crossed her face. Your father chased him off. Basher snorted softly. Which doctor? The second one. That surprised even him. He threatened him, she said quietly. Swore at him something awful. Her eyes lowered toward the counter. He's gotten worse since then. Basher took a long drink of coffee. Well, he muttered, your husband's a foolish idiot. He deserves what he gets. The words sounded cruel, even in his own ears. But his mother only stared silently out the kitchen window, too tired, perhaps, to argue any more. A few minutes later, Basher stepped outside. The cold morning air struck him cleanly across the face. The farm stretched wide and glittering beneath dawn light. Frost clung silver white along the onion rows, while the eastern sky slowly unfolded into pale amber behind the fields. Somewhere nearby came the lonely creak of an old weather vane turning in the wind. Then Basher saw Walter, far out near the edge of the north field, already working. Even from a distance, there was something tireless about him. The young man moved steadily through the rows, with sleeves rolled high, boots dark with mud, hands deep in the soil, as though he belonged more naturally to the earth than to any building standing upon it. Basher started walking. The farther he crossed into the field, the clearer it became. Walter had been there for hours already. Freshly turned sections stretched behind him in neat dark lines. Broken irrigation tubing sat repaired beside stacked tools. The work was meticulous. And stranger still, Walter was speaking. At first, Basher thought someone else stood nearby, hidden among the crops. But as he drew closer, he realized Walter was entirely alone, talking softly to himself. Walter finally looked up as Basher approached. You start every morning with insanity, Basher asked. Walter smiled faintly and leaned back against the shovel handle. I was talking to the soil. Basher stopped several feet away. The soil, telling it the fields are in good hands. Walter shrugged lightly and asking it to return the favor. Basher barked out a dry laugh. That's nonsense. Walter did not argue. Instead, he simply gestured quietly around them. Basher looked. The crops were healthier than he remembered ever seeing them. Even in early morning light, the onions stood thick and vibrant from the earth, their green stalks strong and uniform across the rows. The soil itself looked richer somehow, dark, living, freshly turned with care rather than obligation. The entire field breathed with startling vitality. Walter rested both hands atop the shovel. Most things grow better, he said softly, when they believe somebody's listening. Basher grabbed the first tool he found, leaning against the irrigation cart. A heavy steel hoe, worn smooth from decades of hands, and drove it hard into the soil. The impact jarred clean through his shoulders. Good. He welcomed the ache immediately. Without another word, he moved down the rows, cutting weeds, breaking clumps, turning earth with rough, efficient force. Dirt sprayed dark across his boots. Frost melted beneath the heat of the rising morning. The work returned to him quickly, settling into muscle memory, older than thought itself. But there was something furious beneath it. Basher worked the way some men argued. Every strike of the tool carried resentment inside it. At Walter, at Arthur, at the farm, at himself for caring about any of it at all. And beneath that resentment lived a quieter desperation he refused to name. He wanted Walter to see him, not as some softened lawyer visiting from Madison, not as a grieving widower wandering back to the ruins of his childhood. He wanted the young man to understand that these fields belonged to Basher in ways no outsider could ever comprehend. His body remembered every inch of this land, the winters that split fingernails bloody, the summers that burned sweat and onion salt into his eyes, the endless rhythm of labor before dawn and after dark. Basher attacked the work as though proving something. Walter simply watched him, not mockingly, not impressed either, just watching quietly, with one hand resting atop the shovel handle, eyes calm beneath the pale morning light. That calm irritated Basher more than criticism would have. After some time, Walter wandered away without explanation. Basher noticed only vaguely at first, too absorbed in the rhythm of his anger. But eventually he glanced up and saw the young man descending the far embankment beyond the North Rose toward the river bordering the property. Tall grass swallowed him from sight. Basher kept working. Minutes stretched, then more. The sun climbed higher over the fields, thawing the last silver frost from the earth. Still, Walter did not return. Finally, Basher stopped altogether, breathing hard. The silence around him felt suddenly immense. Only wind moved through the onion stalks now, whispering softly over the rose. He leaned against the tool and stared toward the riverbank with growing annoyance. What the hell was he doing there? The property line curved along a shallow river Basher remembered from childhood, muddy and cold year-round, cutting through the farm like a dark seam. As boys, local kids used to fish there in summer evenings, until Arthur chased them off with threats. Still, Walter did not appear. Curiosity slowly overtook irritation. Basher stepped a few paces toward the embankment before finally seeing movement below. Walter emerged slowly through the tall grass. There was something strangely deliberate about the way he walked back uphill. Unhurried, thoughtful. His sleeves were damp near the wrists. Mud darkened the knees of his work pants. Basher frowned. "You fall in." Walter said nothing. By the time he returned to the rose, Basher's irritation had fully returned with him. "You were gone long enough," Basher snapped. "Left me out here working alone." Walter glanced over the disturbed rose where Basher had been laboring furiously. Then, without answering, he walked directly to the section Basher had finished and crouched carefully beside the crops. Basher watched him in disbelief. Walter pressed his hands gently into the soil, adjusting the broken lines, straightening uprooted stalks, smoothing displaced earth back into careful order. "What are you doing?" Basher demanded. Walter continued calmly. "You disturbed the rose." Basher gave a short, incredulous laugh. "I was working." "You were attacking." That answer landed like a slap. Walter lifted one onion stalk carefully upright where Basher's heavy swings had bent it sideways into the dirt. "In your haste," he said softly, "you stopped paying attention. The lines matter. The spacing matters. You bruised roots you never noticed." Basher's jaw tightened instantly. "I worked these fields before you were even born." Walter nodded easily. "I believe that." something in the lack of challenge made the response worse. Basher stepped closer. Then maybe don't lecture me about my own farm. Walter rose slowly to his feet. Morning wind moved softly through the fields around them. Then, very calmly, Walter asked, "What did you actually learn here?" Basher stared at him. Walter's eyes remained steady. "You spent years in these fields," he continued. "But were you present for any of it?" The question struck somewhere deeper than insult. Basher felt heat flash instantly through his chest. "What the hell is that supposed to mean?" Walter gestured lightly towards the rows around them. "You know labor," he said. "That's different from knowing a thing." Basher's grip tightened hard around the hoe handle. "As a boy, did you notice when the soil turned too acidic after heavy rain?" Walter asked quietly. "Did you learn which parts of the river flood first after thaw? Did you hear how the crops lean before frost? Did you understand the fields?" Basher stepped toward him sharply. "I understood enough to survive them." Walter held his gaze without moving. "Yes," he said, "that's exactly what I mean." The rage that rose in Basher then shocked even himself, because beneath Walter's words lurked a terrible possibility that Basher had spent his entire childhood enduring the farm without ever truly seeing it. That pain had consumed every season before memory could preserve anything else. He remembered Arthur's fists more clearly than the shape of spring planting, remembered fear more vividly than harvest. The realization felt less like accusation and more like theft, as though something valuable had been taken from him long ago without his knowledge. And Walter, standing there, calm among the rows somehow seemed to know it. Basher stood motionless among the rows long after the anger itself had burned down. The wind moved softly through the onions around him, carrying the damp mineral smell of turned earth and river water. Somewhere overhead, unseen geese called out across the pale blue sky in ragged formation. Walter had returned quietly to his work. No triumph in him, no smugness. That somehow made everything worse. Basher drove the hoe once into the dirt beside him and leaned heavily against the handle, breathing through his nose while thoughts drifted loose and unwanted through his mind. And, as they always did in moments when his anger exhausted itself, they found June. Not memories exactly, fragments. The feeling of her fingers lazily tracing circles against the back of his wrist while he read paperwork late at night. The sound of her laughing softly whenever he became too serious about something trivial. The way she tilted her head when listening, not waiting to speak, but truly listening, as though another person's thoughts deserved room to fully exist. He remembered how often she spoke to things most people ignored. Plants in the apartment window, stray dogs, rain against glass. Once, years ago, she had paused during a walk simply to place her palm against the trunk of an old oak tree. Basher had laughed and asked what exactly she thought the tree was going to say back. Maybe nothing, June had answered. But that's different from having nothing to say. At the time, he had rolled his eyes affectionately and called her strange. Now, the memory ached with unbearable tenderness. Walter's earlier words about the soil stirred unpleasantly beside it. Most things grow better when they believe somebody's listening. Basher hated that sentence for lingering inside him. Without looking up from the rose, Walter suddenly asked, "Do you miss her?" The question struck so cleanly that Basher felt cold immediately. He turned sharply. "Who?" Walter continued smoothing soil around the base of a stalk. "The person talking to you now." Basher stared at him. Walter finally lifted his eyes. "Do you miss them?" For a moment, neither man spoke. Then Basher's expression hardened, instantly shut. "That's none of your damn business." Walter gave a small nod, as though the answer had been expected all along. Basher turned and walked away before the young man could speak again. His boots crushed hard across the dirt rows as he crossed the fields toward the house. Anger rolled through him now, but thinner than before. Uneasy, searching for somewhere proper to land, because Walter should not have known about June. Basher had barely spoken her name aloud since arriving. Yet, somehow, the young man kept stepping carelessly into places Basher guarded more fiercely than his own pride.